A simple man in sandals stood at the dockside, watching teens laugh from the upper deck of a luxury yacht. "You lost, old man?" one of them called out, their champagne flutes glittering in the sun. The crowd laughed, loud, mocking, entitled. He smiled, and took out a single key. When the engines roared to life, and the captain saluted him, their laughter turned to stunned silence. The sun hung low over the marina, casting golden ripples across the water as seagulls circled lazily above. The docks buzzed with the chatter of the young and wealthy, their laughter spilling over the lapping waves like champagne foam on the edge of an overpoured glass. A towering white yacht named Serafina rocked gently in the slip, glimmering like a floating palace. It was the kind of vessel you'd only see on the front page of luxury magazines, all glass railings, marble decks, and staff in matching uniforms, moving with silent precision. The scent of salt mingled with perfume and cologne as music thumped faintly from inside. A velvet rope cordoned off the boarding plank, guarded by a smug young man in a navy blazer with a clipboard and an earpiece, clearly relishing his temporary role as gatekeeper to opulence. Then Elias approached. His sandals slapped softly against the wooden dock, his linen shirt slightly wrinkled from the ocean breeze. The leather satchel at his side swayed with each step, old, cracked, and clearly loved. His gray-streaked hair was tucked under a straw hat, and his sun-tanned skin hinted at years spent under open skies. He didn't walk with arrogance or hurry, just a quiet purpose. "Excuse me," Elias said, voice low but firm, as he reached the rope. The young gatekeeper looked up from his clipboard and blinked, clearly confused by the sight before him. "Yes? Are you lost, sir?" He said "sir" the way someone might say "sir" to a stray cat, trying to get into a wedding. "Number I'm here for the event?" Elias replied calmly. "Private party." The kid shot back instantly, tightening his grip on the clipboard. "Invite only, guests only." From the deck, a group of teens and 20-somethings had taken notice. Perfectly sun-kissed, dripping in designer brands, and loud in every sense of the word. One of the boys, blonde, chiseled, shirtless despite the setting, laughed. "Yo, is that your uncle trying to sneak on board?" he hollered, earning chuckles from his group. A girl in oversized sunglasses and a tiny gold bikini leaned over the railing. "Sorry, Grandpa, this is a Gucci-only party," another boy added. "Hope he doesn't drop his retirement check in the ocean." The laughter rolled over Elias like a wave, but he didn't flinch. "If you'd just let the host know I'm here, he'll vouch for me," he said, eyes still on the gatekeeper. "Right," the young man sneered, folding his arms. "And the host is your tennis buddy?" One of the teens, a red-haired kid in a silk Versace shirt, raised his champagne flute. "I bet he's here to clean the boat. Did the captain forget to call in the janitor?" More laughter. It rang across the marina, cruel and indulgent. A few older guests on nearby yachts turned to watch, curious. "Look, man," the gatekeeper said, stepping in front of Elias. "You're clearly confused. This isn't a sightseeing tour. These are million-dollar boats, okay? People don't just walk up and get on." "People?" Elias asked softly, raising an eyebrow. "Or just certain people?" The gatekeeper's jaw clenched. "Don't start with that. You're not on the list. Period. So unless you want to get escorted by security—" "Too late," said a burly man in a black polo walking briskly from a nearby dock post. "We've got a situation?" "This guy's trying to sneak onto the Serafina," the gatekeeper explained with exaggerated urgency. "Claims he's supposed to be here." The security guard looked Elias over, from his sandals to the scuffs on his satchel, then turned back to the gatekeeper. "You want me to walk him off?" Elias sighed. Looking past them to the yacht, he could see more teens now crowding the railings, some filming with their phones. "Oh," a girl cooed. "He looks like he just came from a farmer's market." "Someone give him a mimosa and a map to the retirement center," another teen jeered. "Better yet, give him a mirror." The taunts stung, not because they were personal, but because they were familiar. This wasn't the first time people had looked at Elias and seen nothing but poverty or age. It was always the same. The assumption that dignity required diamonds, and that wealth dressed in labels. "Sir," the security guard said, placing a hand on Elias's shoulder. "Let's not make a scene." Elias looked at the hand, then at the man. "You're already making it," he replied. "I came peacefully." "And now you're leaving," the gatekeeper said, crossing his arms triumphantly. "Try the public pier, old man. Maybe there's a fishing boat you can afford." As Elias turned to walk away, the crowd burst into fresh laughter, unrestrained and venomous. The sound followed him down the dock like a trail of mockery. One boy, now emboldened, shouted, "Next time, wear your big boy pants." Elias paused just for a moment, back still to them. He adjusted his hat slightly and continued walking, each step steady, composed, silent. The breeze picked up, fluttering the hem of his shirt as he disappeared into the golden light. And though his back was turned, none of them saw the slight smile on his face. They had no idea what they had just done, no idea who he really was, and no idea what tomorrow would bring. The waves kissed the shoreline outside Elias's cottage, in rhythmic hushes, the soft moan of the tide a gentle contrast to the sharp laughter that had echoed in his ears all day. The house sat perched on a weathered bluff, overlooking the harbor, modest, unassuming, even a little shabby to an outsider. Salt-stained shutters flanked the windows, and vines crept lazily along the porch railing. There was no gate, no manicured garden, no signs of the vast wealth Elias possessed. Only a rusted wind chime spinning softly in the breeze, and the glow of a single lamp in the front room betrayed signs of life inside. Elias stepped through the creaking door, slipping off his sandals, and placed the satchel on an antique wooden bench. The place smelled like cedar and ocean, like history etched into wood. He moved through the small but comfortable living space, the walls lined with black and white photographs in mismatched frames. Ships, docks, smiling faces. Some taken decades ago, others more recent but equally treasured. One wall was almost entirely dedicated to nautical maps, some vintage and yellowed, others with annotations in his own careful handwriting. The far corner held a dusty drafting table, covered in blueprints and mechanical sketches layered with notations that most would find incomprehensible. Elias ran his hand along the edge of the table, his calloused fingers brushing against the worn corner of a document, a blueprint of a dual-axis propulsion system that had changed the marine industry 2 decades ago. It bore his initials in the top right corner. E.H. He smiled faintly. It had been years since he'd touched those designs, years since he'd walked the corridors of a shipyard in steel-toed boots. The world knew the technology. They just didn't know him. He moved toward a shelf where awards gathered dust, plaques of recognition from naval engineering institutions, a medal from the International Marine Innovation Forum, a commemorative token from a university that had once offered him an honorary doctorate. He had accepted none of the publicity, opting instead to assign the patents to shell corporations and private foundations. Not for secrecy, but because he'd learned early on that the moment people knew what you had, they stopped seeing who you were. On a nearby console sat a thick leather-bound album. Elias opened it gently, revealing yellowing newspaper clippings, black and white photographs, and handwritten letters. One headline read, "Silent Power, the anonymous tech revolution behind modern yachts." Another, "Unknown genius sells propulsion patent for record $300 million, refuses interview." There was a picture of him from the back, captured mid-step at a marina in Monaco. His name had never appeared by his design. He had made his fortune quietly, carefully. As he flipped further, he came to a faded photo of 2 boys on a small sailboat, one grinning widely at the camera, the other looking up toward the sky with squinted eyes and tousled hair. His brother, Matteo, younger by 4 years, louder by 10, the heart, while Elias had been the mind. They'd spent their childhood summers building boats from driftwood and soda bottles, pretending they were sea captains exploring uncharted islands. Their dream had always been to build a yacht together. That dream had nearly come true, until the betrayal. Elias paused at a letter tucked behind the photo. It was crinkled, the ink slightly smudged. Matteo's handwriting. "I'm sorry, El. I didn't know they'd sell the design out from under us. I should have read the fine print. I just wanted us to be known." A bitter ache spread in Elias's chest. Dull, but persistent. Matteo had died 3 months after that letter. A car accident. Sudden. Senseless. The same week their joint patent had been acquired by a billion-dollar conglomerate. Elias never fought the sale, never reclaimed his name. Instead, he went silent. Let the money grow quietly while he disappeared into simplicity. It was his way of mourning, of coping, of disappearing from the world that had taken his brother and replaced dreams with digits. But even as the years passed, Elias never truly left the sea. He invested, quietly, in the marinas that used his tech. He owned a controlling stake in 3 major yacht manufacturers, always through layered holding companies. He funded scholarships for young engineers anonymously, and when the Serafina had been built, the very yacht he was denied entry to earlier that day, it had been signed off with his encrypted signature in the engine room. The irony wasn't lost on him. The same kids who mocked him drank champagne over engines powered by his brilliance. His sandals had walked docks that wouldn't exist without him. He was the bones beneath their luxury, and they had no idea. Elias turned back to the mantel, where a faded photograph stood in a simple brass frame. Matteo again, older now, standing aboard the Nerissa, the first yacht they had ever truly built together. It had taken 3 years, a dozen prototypes, and more sleepless nights than Elias could count. Matteo had been grinning ear to ear, one hand on the wheel, the wind pulling his jacket back like a cape. Elias picked up the frame, staring into his brother's smile. "You always wanted them to see us," he whispered. "You wanted the name and lights. I just wanted the engines to run." The room was quiet save for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the distant call of an owl outside. Elias looked down at his hands. Still rough, still capable, and somewhere inside, still burning with purpose. He crossed to his desk and pulled open a drawer. Inside was a small, worn leather key pouch. From it, he withdrew a single, matte black yacht key, simple, unmarked, save for a tiny engraving on the bottom. E.H. He turned it over in his palm slowly, thoughtfully. Then looked back toward the photograph on the wall of Serafina, under construction. Blue tape still around the railings. Engineers huddled near the stern. The ship not yet polished, not yet worshipped. "Tomorrow," Elias said quietly, the wind rattling the shutters as if in agreement. "Let's remind them what true worth looks like." He slid the key into his pocket, walked to the back of the cottage, and opened a large cedar cabinet built into the wall. Inside hung a captain's jacket, pressed, spotless, never worn. A gift from a shipbuilder he'd once saved from bankruptcy, with a single wire transfer. Beneath it sat a pair of Italian leather shoes he hadn't touched in years, still in their box. He didn't reach for either. Instead, he turned off the light and returned to the porch, barefoot. The moonlight shimmered off the ocean, stretching to the horizon like a silver ribbon. Somewhere out there, Serafina floated, full of kids who thought money made them powerful, who thought names and shoes and watches defined value. But the tide was turning. The water would remember who built the vessel. Elias sat down, rested his feet on the railing, and looked up at the stars. Tomorrow wasn't about revenge. It was about revelation. A quiet reminder that some men don't shout their worth. They anchor it, deep, steady, and unshakable. The morning sun shimmered across the bay like a mirror made of fire, golden light painting the glassy surface of the marina as if the ocean itself were awakening. The Serafina floated proudly in her berth, her sleek hull gleaming in the sunlight, white against the sapphire-blue water. Above deck, the laughter had already begun. The entitled kind, the kind that sounded like it, had never known rejection. The same teenagers from the night before were back, still dressed like catalog models, sipping sparkling cocktails from frosted flutes, and posing for selfies against the polished railings. Phones were out, live streams rolling, hashtags flying. One of the boys, the blonde with the abs and arrogance, held up his phone and shouted into the camera, "Another day, another yacht! Life's too short to wear cheap shoes, baby!" The girls shrieked with laughter. One in a designer bikini posed dramatically with her hand over her forehead. "Oh, the sun is too bright. Someone call Daddy's pilot. I need my shades from the jet." One of the staff members passed by with a tray of drinks, and a girl snapped her fingers. "Hey, extra ice next time, okay? This one's warm." No thank you, no eye contact. Just expectation that the world would cater, bend, obey. A deckhand, no older than 22, gave a tight nod, and moved silently away, jaw clenched. You'd think for a yacht this expensive, another teen muttered, they'd hire better help. The blond boy snorted. They're probably making like $10 an hour, just happy to be near people like us. He laughed, tossing a grape overboard like he was feeding fish. Some people just serve. That's what they're made for. The group roared again, oblivious to the ripple in the marina. A low hum, deep and resonant, began to build across the water, the kind of sound you felt more than heard. Slowly, silently, a yacht approached from the far side of the harbor. But not just any yacht. This one cut through the bay like a living thing, long, angular, almost predatory in its grace. Its hull was black with a subtle silver shimmer, reflecting the light like moonlight off obsidian. Unlike the flashiness of Serafina, this vessel was quiet power incarnate. It didn't announce itself with music or flags or a crowd. It didn't need to. From the control tower at the marina, the operator's jaw dropped. "No way," he whispered, eyes locked on the radar. "Is that the Alethea?" The name wasn't publicized, not really. Only whispered at closed-door conferences. A prototype, a myth, the yacht industry's ghost ship. Not because it didn't exist, but because no one had ever seen it dock. The teens on Serafina noticed the shift in energy before they even saw the ship. The music seemed to fade, the laughter thinning like mist in the sun. One of the girls shielded her eyes. "What is that?" The others turned. The black yacht was pulling alongside, silent but massive, a full 40 feet longer than Serafina, her design sleek and futuristic, like something out of a science fiction movie. The marina manager burst through the staff entrance, his earpiece bouncing as he ran down the dock. "Clear the port side. Now." Deckhands scrambled, lowering lines, tying off cleats, adjusting fenders. The Alethea stopped without a sound, her custom propulsion humming so quietly it sounded like nothing at all. A single crewman stepped forward in a white uniform, pressed and spotless. He stood at attention, eyes straight ahead. Then, slowly, he turned to the side, pressed a button on the railing, and a titanium staircase unfolded down toward the dock like a swan's wing. A breathless hush blanketed the entire scene. No music, no movement, just anticipation. Then Elias appeared. He stepped onto the dock from the walkway near the harbor wall, same as the day before. Same sandals, same linen shirt, same satchel. No entourage, no announcement. He walked calmly toward the staircase, his stride quiet, unhurried. The teens stared, mouths open. Champagne forgotten. The girl who'd mocked him the day before blinked like she was seeing a ghost. "Wait, is that?" "It's him," the blonde kid whispered, frozen. "The janitor guy." The gatekeeper from the previous day nearly dropped his clipboard as Elias passed. The marina manager rushed forward. "Sir," he gasped, breathless. "Mr. Hale, I had no idea we didn't, I'm so." Elias raised a hand gently. "No need," he said. "Let's just get her ready." The captain stood at the base of the staircase, back straight, saluting. "Permission to board, sir. Your yacht is ready." Elias nodded and stepped past him, ascending the stairs slowly. He paused at the top, now level with the deck of Serafina. A dozen shocked eyes met his. The girl's mimosa slipped from her hand and shattered on the deck, orange liquid spreading like a slow confession. Elias looked at them, not with anger, not with smugness. Just that same quiet gaze from yesterday, now impossibly heavier with meaning. "Funny," he said softly. "You thought I was nobody. In a place I built, not one of them moved. Not one spoke. One of the boys had his phone halfway raised, but his hand dropped to his side, ashamed. The blond kid opened his mouth, then closed it again, unable to form words. "I don't blame you," Elias continued. "The world's taught you that wealth wears gold, not grit. That power looks like followers and filters. But let me offer you something different." He gestured behind him to the open staircase. "I'm taking Alethea out today. Not for a show, not for a party, just a cruise. The invitation's open. If you'd like to come, you're welcome." The silence held its breath. Some teens looked at each other nervously. A girl stepped forward, then stepped back. The blond kid shifted awkwardly, his pride too swollen to let him move. One of the younger boys, maybe 18, finally stood, He was the quietest of the group. Hadn't mocked Elias the day before. Had mostly just watched, hesitant. He stepped forward, slowly, head down. "I'd like to come," he said quietly. Elias nodded. "Then welcome aboard." The boy crossed the dock, past his stunned peers, past the trembling gatekeeper, and up the stairs. The captain stepped aside. Elias led him inside. The rest remained on Serafina, still frozen, still grasping the weight of what they'd missed. As the Alethea pulled away, the black hull casting long shadows across the dock, the sound of the engines was barely audible, but the impact of her departure was deafening. Later that day, out at sea, the boy stood beside Elias on the bridge. "Why did you let me come?" he asked. Elias didn't look at him. "Because you were the only one willing to learn." "Learn what?" Elias gestured to the open ocean. "That greatness doesn't need to shout. That real wealth is quiet. And that dignity," he added, glancing at the boy now, "is how you treat someone when you think they have nothing to give you." The boy nodded slowly, looking out across the water. For the first time in his life, he felt small, but in the way that made you want to grow. Not for likes, not for clout, but for meaning. As the Alethea cut through the waves, a new kind of story began. Not one written in dollar signs or social media stats, but in respect, humility, and the realization that sometimes the most powerful people are the ones no one sees coming.